Welcome to the Agents of the Unexplained podcast. From a haunted abandoned asylum to Sasquatch lurking in the dark woods and watching you, and all things unexplained, here are the stories from outside our realm. With your host, Bill Rigby.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight is a really special night. I had a cancellation. I get a hold of this person yesterday evening. I asked if he's busy. Can he help me out? And right away, he said yes. He's a great researcher, great speaker, and very knowledgeable. Mr. Russell Easterbrook. I will bring him in. There he is.
There you go. Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, Bill. Just a little.
Oh, not again.
Yeah.
Jeez. It got to be my headset.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. But, Russell, I know a lot of the people already know you. They know you from being on Larry Batson and other podcasts. Yep. You know, you're a great researcher too, and you're very knowledgeable. But
I spend a lot of time looking at this stuff, and you know, there again, I'm interested in the past a lot and how that affects the future with our sightings and stuff. And so I spend a lot of time looking at you know, Native American stuff and breaking down well-known encounters like the Osterman encounter and William Rowe. I mean, those are two very good ones that have a lot of really interesting things to look at to compare to sightings that we see today. Most recently, a sighting with Ernie is really pretty interesting.
Yes.
I'm actually putting it down on paper for him right now because I think it should be preserved. And it's a
Ernie sighting up there. Yes, Ernie sighting. When he first told me about it, it's like, oh wow.
Yeah.
And I got to agree with him. Hand signals.
Yeah. It's definitely it's not your ordinary sighting. It's extraordinary, and being able to be as close as he was, being able to see two Sasquatch actually speak back and forth to each other.
Yes.
To see them put their hand around their mouth and then whistle. You know, actually
that's the thing. Yeah. And I got to agree, you know, with Ernie. That's something we really, really got to try to get into and try to see more of when we see these things.
Right, because we're looking for things that we can compare to other sightings. And when you look at Albert Osterman, I mean, he was kidnapped, but basically, and brought back to the encampment. But he was very early. That was 1924. And he got to see and hear the chatter talk. And I think he was one of the very first people to describe that. And today it's common. I mean, the work that's been done on the Sierra Sounds and the work that Scott Nelson has done to look at that, break down some of that chatter talk and try to understand some of it. It's just amazing. And so that was one of the first ones encounters that described that. And then when you see an encounter today, like Ernie's, and he sees the same thing. So it's very comparable to the Osterman account. So.
Right. And with Ernie, though, you know, he actually realized, and luckily what he did was they were making him at ease with these hand signals to corner him.
Right. And that was the thing. There again, most people that have a sighting, I mean, I mean, you can't help it, but most people, their adrenaline spikes, their fight or flight kicks in, and yeah. I mean, it's just the way it is. It just happens. So it's very difficult to be able to control your emotions and stuff during on a sighting like that, and to be so close, for Ernie to be so close, and then have the Sasquatch walking towards him with his hands out, and I mean, Ernie was able to hold his ground and just, not, because he said, I'm not going to run. If I run, this thing is going to attack me. It's like, it's going to get me anyway. So
exactly. And the thing is, like you said, the adrenaline and everything, he kept his cool. He actually kept his cool, which I think saved his life. I really
do. Yeah, probably did. It's like, because if they thought, he was encroaching on their hunting ground, they might have been, or certainly could have been, a lot more aggressive. But, it all worked out in the end. But of course, his military background and his martial art background and stuff too, that helps allow you to control your emotions and to size up your opponent and the situation. And there's a number of things that go along with both of those components that probably helped him during that sighting.
I kind of agree with you on that, because like with my sighting was within 15 feet, and it scared the living crap out of me. I am not going to lie. But the thing is, I kind of kept my cool. I backpedaled out of there, and without falling down. I did run pretty good backwards.
Well, that's good.
Without falling, But, and I think with my sighting, it was the game of count and coup, which you should know about with the Native American and all that. See how close they can get to you without you noticing. Well, I believe that's what it was doing.
Was it squatted down when
yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yep. And so was I. I was too. I squatted down and I had a scope. I'm going to look down the trail with farther down, see if I can spot anything on down.
Okay.
And when we started in, there was two others, Mike Bennett and Debbie Preggy and myself. Mm-hmm. We're going down the Buckeye Trail there at Salt Fork. I'm not going to see a damn thing at Salt Fork. I just know it.
Yeah.
I might hit the how, but there's too much going on at Salt Fork. I ain't going to see it. How wrong I was. As we're going down that trail, we had stones and nuts getting tossed at us from the left side.
Huh.
Okay. So we go up another 90 paces, stop, and we're checking and listening, and they're taking turns with the scope, and I'm not using the scope. I'm just looking like this here and trying to hear. And some more stones and nuts come up at us.
Oh, okay. So what was the terrain like around there? Was it a lot of thick bushes or fir trees, or?
There's trees, bush, shrubbery.
So it was pretty thick.
Not. Yes and no.
Okay.
In and out. The Buckeye Trail there from the group camp area, you got some, and but you can still see a little bit into the woods.
Okay.
We couldn't see nothing on the left. We don't know what was doing that to us.
Right.
And I looked up in the trees and none of the nuts are falling. Okay. And Debbie goes, after the second or third time we stopped, she goes, I'm too scared to keep going. I said, well, give me the scope. I'll go down. You and Mike wait right here and let me scope it out and see what we can see. So I go down and I kneel down. I'm going like this with the scope, and out of the corner of my right eye, I see a little movement. So I'm going like this with the scope and look this way. And there it was over there, 15 feet. And I'm still trying to adjust the scope looking down the hill. But
Wow.
Yeah, good old nerves. And it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. What I've been waiting for is to see one of these things, and now I get to see it, and I'm
it's
excited.
it's right there, that
Right
close.
there.
But
Right.
I'm kind of laughing now because I know what kind of panic I went into
Yeah.
with the adrenaline and the whole 9 yards. And I refuse to stare at the eyes. I can look at the head, but I would not stare in the eyes. I stood up, it stood up. And I could see where the top of the head was on the tree right beside it.
Right.
And I'm backpedaling now, getting back to the Mike and Debbie. And it's getting dark. And all I could think of is, turn your lights on. Turn your lights on. Tell them to turn their flashlights on. And when Mike finally figured out what I was saying, he turned his on. By then, I'm right at him. And I go, he says, yeah, I know. I just saw Bigfoot's ass. What? What? Yeah, it's running down over the hill. I got to see its rear end. I'm like, oh, really? But that brought my adrenaline down some, which I needed. Because, Russell, I'm not afraid of nothing, brother. Nothing.
Yeah.
That scared the living crap out of me.
It's a surprise factor that's what does it. It's not so much, you can not be afraid. That's not the issue. It's the surprise that causes your body to react the way it does with your adrenaline spike and that flight and fright thing that just kicks in, and before you can actually get a grip on it, and so that and hey, it
exactly. And I ended up with PTSD over it.
Yeah.
And Kumbo Baker and a bunch of other ones kept telling me, talk about your sighting. You'll feel better about it. And I'm thinking, all right, yeah, I'll talk. No. All right, I'll talk. No. And finally, I did start talking about it. It has helped. It still comes back and kicks me in the butt once in a while. And I'm going to admit that.
Yeah. It's a traumatic experience, and any kind of like a car. If you're in a car accident or something, that's a traumatic experience that you can relive over and over, for several years afterwards. So it's something like that, So it's expected that usually if you focus on trying to remember little parts of the if you're like the anatomy or something you were not paying attention to, but you saw it and you have it in your subconscious, but you're trying to retrieve that information. So the more you think about some of those things that you may have seen that you haven't described, then that helps to make it a little bit more comfortable that you were, in charge of your feelings to be able to see some of these, other shoulders, or where the hair was on their face, or if you could see ears and all this kind of small stuff. That would be, that helps a lot.
Well, like I told everyone, I got to see the muscle tones. I got the
the big trap,
the length
muscles.
of the hair. Oh, yeah.
And the trap muscle attachment up on the head.
Yeah. And the thing of that too, I keep telling everyone, Arnold Schwarzenegger would be proud to have a body like that.
Yes.
The muscle tone.
Yeah, the muscle tone is impressive on things. And there again, that's pretty commonplace in most of the sightings that people talk about. It's like how muscular they were, how wide the shoulders are, how large the bicep is in the arm, and just the sheer sheer circumference of the arm and the length of the arm, the amount of leverage that they can produce with that arm and that shoulder muscle, and has got to be, incredible. So, and they're probably, 500 to 900 pounds. They could be anywhere in that range. And I mean, that's pretty formidable. So makes a grizzly bear look like a child's play.
Okay. Now your friend and my friend.
Okay.
I was on the podcast with them, and he drew it pretty close. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The one and only Mr. Larry.
Yeah. He does a really good job with those drawings. He's able to understand what you're describing, and he's able to put it down on paper. So yeah, he does a swell job with that.
Yeah, he's pretty damn close. And and Danielle, she was talking to me through it, and so was Larry. But at the end of the thing, Danielle goes, if you ever see another one, how do you think you're going to react this time if you do see one? I thought for a second. I went, I don't know. I really don't know.
It'll probably be about the same. It'll probably be similar, especially if you're surprised. If you're not surprised and you see it coming out on the trail ahead of you at a distance, you probably will feel a whole lot different. But if you're surprised like you were this time, chances are it's going to be the same. You're going to feel the same.
Especially if we're that close again.
That too. That makes it really as large as they are when they stand up, and when you're 15 feet away. It's like Ernie was about the same distance. He was in that 4 or 5 yards away or closer when it had its hands held up. He could see the lines on the hand. I mean, that's how close.
He told me that, and I went,
that's
I'm on the phone with him, and I almost dropped the phone. I'm telling you that. Hold it.
Yep.
And the thing is that, he's the one that hooked me up to get on there with Larry.
Yep.
Ernie's a great guy. He really is.
Oh yeah, he's a lot of fun. Yeah, and that's why I wanted to put his sighting down on paper, because I think it's a very good sighting. It's something that should be saved, and I'm considering writing a book or something down the road, maybe, but next year we'll see how it all plays out. But I think his account should be written down, and it should be because I
told him that
to the Albert Osterman.
I told him he needs to write this all down.
Yep. Well, I'm helping him with it. I've done 8 pages so far, and I sent it off to him for him to look at it, and he's going to get back to me on how much I need to adjust it. But I got 8 pages, typed pages. So
he remembers everything. And look how long ago it was. He remembers everything about it, and
that's good. He remembers the small details, and that's what you look for. Because people get so upset and they're obviously running to get out of there. They're not wanting to hang around. They don't get a lot of the fine little details that you get when you're really able to observe it really well. So
that's what I mean. He was right there, and he kept his cool. And he made me feel kind of childish because I couldn't keep my cool like that. Seriously.
And he had his shotgun in one hand, but he had pointed it down towards the ground.
Right.
When the Sasquatch put its hands up and giving him the stop sign, and then doing the pointing, I'm still trying to ascertain what that was all about. Pointing at himself and then pointing at Ernie. Maybe he was trying to say that, I'm a hunter just like you, that's what I'm doing here today. Don't mess up our hunt,
Or mess up our hunt. I'm hunting you.
Right. There's going to be repercussions if you're going to mess up my hunt. So
yeah.
And then it just turned its back to him and walked away.
Yes.
It didn't look over its shoulder. It didn't backpedal. It turned its back and walked away. Now that tells me something about the vibe that it got from Ernie, that they knew that Ernie wasn't going to pull his sidearm out and fire a couple shots into the ground or something to try to scare him off or anything. He wasn't worried about Ernie doing anything like that. So he had to have felt something or realized something in those few moments that he was sizing up Ernie and what the situation was going to be like. So
right. And that's the thing. The thing is that my sighting and Ernie's sighting were so different, but similar.
Right.
Yeah, because that came. Yeah,
and that's what you look for with these sightings, is try to find similarities. I mean, everything we're doing in research is with similarities. Why did it do this in this sighting, and in this sighting it didn't do that? Now, why was that? And when the tendency is it's been reacting like this, but suddenly it's not doing that. So
right. Ghost Chick asks, why are there so many sightings of Bigfoot and aliens lately? Every time she looks, there is new stuff. I don't know if there's that many more. I just think it's became more mainstream. People are easier to talk about it.
Right. That's a contributing factor, because I would say that typically you're looking at about 70% of the people out there that have a sighting don't report it. So as more people feel comfortable and report it, that may be why that component is coming out. Now, I'm interested in UFOs and ancient aliens and that kind of stuff, but with Sasquatch, I don't really put a lot of time into researching that aspect of it. There's so much more that can be researched on the other side of it with the Sasquatch by itself that I spend most of my time in that area. So,
but to me, or like Val from Southwest PA said here, I heard some ways say that the Native Americans show palm out meaning something that can't remember exactly what.
Yeah, it's a friendship sign with them too. They used to do like one hand, and so where did Sasquatch get the idea to do that? That's the thing. Maybe it was from the Native Americans, but we saw it in 1924 in the Osterman. It was the same exact thing. Yeah. The only difference was in the Osterman film, the encounter, the Osterman said when he had his hands up, he was saying a word to him, and that word was Soka, or it sounded like Soka, and it's like just a few minutes earlier that Sasquatch was sitting with the juvenile, and they were using the chatter talk back and forth, talking to each other. When they looked over and saw Osterman was trying to leave the area, the big male ran down there, put his hands up, and then said one word, that Soka. Huh. Now, why would he do that? I mean, he was just using his chatter talk. Did he think that Osterman didn't understand the chatter talk, and he would understand this one word? That's what it seems like. And so,
that one word sounds native.
Yes, yeah, I think
native word.
Believe me, I have been looking to try to find that word. I haven't yet. So it's possible that it's a word that sounds.
Where was the Osterman?
That was British Columbia. That was British Columbia. Yeah. So that would be one of those tribes in that area, probably. So the word could be, it sounds like Soka, but maybe it's different, depending on how it
Right.
was pronounced and how Osterman heard it. There could be some variance there. So making it a little bit more difficult to find. It hasn't been easy. I have been looking for it, but I haven't found it yet.
Right.
But that was a conscious decision by the Sasquatch to not use the chatter language, but use this other word because he thought Osterman would understand it. So that in itself, that thought process is pretty interesting, to go from one kind of speech to another, given the situation.
From their language to some other language, not someone else, but someone.
Yeah.
But Julie, my right hand, I call her McQuaid, might the word be Cherokee?
It's possible. It's like the only thing is that the Sasquatch was in British Columbia. So, I'm kind of a believer that, we're looking at Sasquatches that are different on the East Coast and the West Coast. So it may be an East Coast Sasquatch has a language that's based on one of those tribes, Cherokee possibly, or Iroquois, where the West Coast Sasquatch may have a language that's more with one of those type of tribes. So they wouldn't be, if East Coast and a West Coast Sasquatch wouldn't be able to speak it to each other. They could probably use sign language and maybe some gestures and things like that, but to actually use the same words, it's probably not, any more than the Native Americans were. A Cherokee couldn't go out into the on the West Coast to one of those tribes, and they're different languages. So
the Crows and that. Yep, you're right. Yep. And that's what I've been telling people right along. Each one they might look similar, but they are different.
Right.
They could be.
I compare it to look at it as if we're talking about a Sasquatch family, the same as we're talking about the canine family. And in the canine family, you have a wolf, you have a coyote, you have a fox. They're all the same family. They look similar, but they're different.
Exactly.
With the Sasquatch in the same situation with a Sasquatch family, and then have an East Coast Sasquatch and a West Coast Sasquatch and possibly an Alaskan triangle Sasquatch. I mean, there could be as many as 3 different varieties of this thing.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. And, that's where I'm going with that, along with the languages that they might speak to each other. And
right, it's true. Yeah, a lot of the tribes, some of the tribes with the disease that came from Europe, when the settlers came over here, pretty much wiped out the Narragansett tribe on the East Coast, and some of the other tribes were really damaged, where they just had no immune system for that disease, so that hurt them a lot. I don't know that it was quite so damaging to the West Coast. You don't hear about it being quite as serious there as it was on the East Coast. But still, I mean, it's very possible. There could be a tribe whose language has been kind of lost, and that word I'm looking for could be in that. So,
Angel was putting that up too. There are many lost languages from the Native Americans. Some tribes they were dictated by white man and disease, like you were just saying, and which is 100% true. And Southwest Vale, or Vale, Southwest PA, Russell, do you believe they migrate or stay in the same area? Thank you for addressing my question. Much appreciated.
I think it depends on where they are. If they're in Pennsylvania, where you folks are, then it's like, or in Virginia, where I am, North Carolina, they probably don't migrate very much. They don't move around. But if they are probably up in upper New York State or in Canada, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some migration. Now, it wouldn't be true migration. It's more that they would be following the food supply. And as the winter gets harder, the food gets harder to get. So, I think that
I
they
agree
would
with you.
Yeah.
I agree
Yep.
with you there. There's a certain aspect. What
Yeah.
I kind of see here is they travel in like a circle.
Yes.
Okay. They're in a certain area for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. And then they move up a little and around. It's not just following the food source, but not killing the food source off.
Right.
I believe.
Right. I think that they're going to have a territory just like a mountain lion does.
Yeah.
Mountain lion is typically 75 to 100 miles, depending on the terrain and the available food source. So, I've been an advocate for Sasquatch population estimates that they are probably about every 100 square miles is what they need. And I know the Russians have done some work on that, trying to come up with a figure too, and their figure is a little higher than mine. They think it's more like 300 per Sasquatch square miles, but I think it works out around the 100 range. That would be comparable to a mountain lion. So, it's just a rough way of getting an idea of a guesstimate of a population report. So,
you're giving it 100-mile radius. I was only giving 50, but you studied it a lot deeper than I have. So I'm going to go along with you with this.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the it depends on the size of the family pod too.
Well, that too. It's like I'm talking about just one Sasquatch, but it could be a whole family unit staying within that 100-mile range.
Right.
And we don't know how territorial they are, so we don't know if those 100-mile circles overlap or if there's spaces between them which are occupied by both parties, or et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot we don't know. But certainly it would be a way to come up with a rough guesstimate of some kind of a population in your state.
That's the thing. I had a couple different people try to give me an estimate on how to do it, and their estimates, I believe, was way low. Compared to the Class A sightings.
Michael Anthony and I spoke quite a bit about that. We went back and forth before I went on his show. For most of one day, we did a back and forth on what our thoughts were on this population idea. So we took Maine as a possible a state to look at. And there again, for me, it worked out about 350 Sasquatch in the state of Maine. His figure was a little higher. He was more like 2,000 in the state of Maine. But we have to also remember, if you have a large black bear population, they compete with Sasquatch for some of the food that Sasquatch is after, except maybe for deer. The bear don't really take a lot of deer down, but
no, they usually, well, Nick, wait a minute. That was Angel. Angel goes, the Pennsylvania Native Americans in PA would travel about 4 sleeps from camp to camp. They would travel at 30 miles a day, so it'd be between 80 to 120 miles they travel.
Okay, so that's in
that sounds about right. Yeah, that's in the ballpark.
Yep, it sure is. So, and so I think that's a safe number to do a very rough estimate of a population in your state. Now, like I said, if you have a large black bear population like they do in Maine, I think it was like 25 to 30,000 based on Fish and Wildlife, they compete for a lot of the same food. So the Sasquatch may move around a little more, which might increase their range. They would probably go into Canada for sure. So.
Oh yeah. And my friend Chuck Eves says he just got on. How did He heard part of it, but how did you come up with the number? He wanted to hear that.
Well, it's
Guesstimate.
somewhat of a guesstimate for sure. But I think we look at what animals that we have that we know what their range is. And so because of the amount of deer that the Sasquatch would be eating, along with the other things in their diet, I compare it more to the mountain lion, because the mountain lion is after the deer for the most part, where the black bears are mostly eating the other things that the Sasquatch would be eating: your berries, your nuts, your tubers, stuff of that nature. So,
Yep.
But their range is about 30 some miles. Might be a little bit more there, again, depending on the availability of the food and what the terrain is like. And of course, the bears, hibernate for several months too in Maine. So, so all of that has to be taken into account. So it would be to look at what your state has for a population of Sasquatch. I would take that number of 100 square miles and start with that as a jumping off point. And then determine the black bear population and how much that may affect the Sasquatch number that you're coming up with.
Do you know how the Pennsylvania Game Commission comes up with the black bear numbers? Which is way wrong, I believe.
Yeah.
Do you know how they do it?
I don't know how they come up with it, but
they count them so many males. Then they times it by 3. All right. Maybe they missed a few males and counted females as males.
Yeah. So
I don't go by their count in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Their count's solely wrong.
And there again, they're given a basic estimate. It's just a number to give you something to work with, but it's really an estimate. And
it's an estimate to sell ticket or license for.
Right.
Yeah. So
they take into account how many are shot every year, and that kind of stuff goes into it too. The winter, was the winter real hard, then they may not have survived the hibernation, or maybe it was an easy winter. So there's a lot of things that go into the figure that they come up with for an estimate too. But they do have an idea, because they've had collars on bears to be able to figure out how big a range they do have. And
exactly.
And so the figures they have for that range for those animals is a good piece of information to start with for your estimates on a Sasquatch.
Right. And I know somebody was trying to put a tracker thing up high on trees that will catch on the hairs of a Sasquatch to track them. And
yeah, I saw an account of that, and there's the fellow that the group that had done it had done a scientific paper on it, and I just got the paper recently, and I've been looking at it. I haven't got it all read yet. It's about 40 pages, but that's what they did. They created a burr, which they hung at a height of 7 feet, and it had a transmitter on it, and it was picked up. Something did get it, and they had the signal for a short period of time, a couple of weeks. Then they lost the signal and couldn't get it again for a couple more weeks, until they sent a plane up that circled the area, and they were able to pick it up again. And they ended up with being able to keep a track of it, and for about, I think it was 3 months total, and it came and made a full circle back to where it picked up the burr, where it was hung on the tree, on the string that they hung across the trail. And their estimate was 70 square miles is what that Sasquatch, if it was a Sasquatch, that's what it covered.
Wow.
They tried to see it in a few areas, because obviously they knew where it was, being able to track it. Right. But that they weren't able to catch up to it or see it, because the thing, it's like it knew they were there or something, knew they were ahead of it, and it avoided them. But that's what they came up with, a number of about 70 square miles for this thing, whatever it was, assuming it was a Sasquatch. I mean, they would have these cotton threads hung out across the trails with the birds hanging on it. And it's like, so it would have walked right through it. And that's how the bird would have got attached to the shoulder or the neck area. That's what they were targeting.
Right. Gary Gerhardt said he watched that show, and they did get a thermal of it.
Okay.
Which is good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I just wish I had the money for the technology to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, that piece of information they were able to obtain of a 70 square mile loop that this thing made, and actually came back to where it had picked up the burr, was pretty interesting. That it would go over a mountain range and down into a valley and then up and around and come all the way back around to the starting point. So that in itself was pretty interesting, and the amount of acres. And it
tells us a lot of information there too.
That's for
how
sure.
It does it and what it's doing. And so that makes that's a big plus. Yeah. All right, I got to get a couple shout outs.
Okay.
Nikki from Hairy Man Hoaxes and Hoodwinks out there. We got Ghost Chick, Norm Domack, Chuck Eves, Brian Little. I'm looking forward to seeing you this summer, buddy. He does the Gretchen Fest down there at Beaver Creek in Ohio. He has me coming down speaking there this year. That's a nice fest. He did the first one last year. It was a big, big success. With all honesty, what they came up with just that tracker, that one tracker, and the radius it walked, that's still within your 100 miles that you came up with.
Yep. So I mean, that's good.
All right. So we know this thing was at least 7 foot tall.
Right.
To get it caught on it.
Right. So that eliminates, this was also in the late fall. So they were going into the time when the bears were going into hibernation. So whatever picked up the burr had to be at least 7 feet tall to get it. So that kind of limits what's walking around out there. I mean, there was no moose there. This was in, I believe it was Oklahoma, where it was. So there was no moose. So you're looking at deer, maybe elk, but to be able to pick it up, it's got to be at least 7 feet tall. So, now is it possible that it, got knocked off by a bird landing on the string or something and knocked the thing on the ground, and maybe it got caught on a coyote or something? Certainly possible, but to cover 70 square miles and come back to the same place is kind of out of character for a coyote.
Very much so. A coyote won't travel that far.
No, their range isn't that much either. And there's no wolves down in that neck of the woods either. So they would have more range, but they're not there. So it seems very probable that they did get a Sasquatch with it. So
it's a very good possibility. And what I like about that it adds the scientific proof to it too. Right.
Yeah, to give it the idea of what a range might be is pretty valuable piece of information. Because if we're in an area and we're expecting to have had some sighting reports crossing roads or something, and we know that there's some in the area, well, now suddenly we have a figure to give us an idea where our search area will be inside that 70 square miles or 100 square miles or whatever number you're going to use. But that's what they came up with. So that's a jumping off place to start. So that's very beneficial. So if they get nothing more than that out of, I think that their goal was to tranquilize and bring back a live specimen. I think they'd also talked about killing one too, and I'm not for that. I'm not.
No,
I'm a
no.
So I don't believe that. I think the tranquilizer idea might be good, but not
Very
killing.
dangerous. It's very dangerous. How much tranquilizer do you know to use on it? Number one, and number two.
Yeah. Yeah. There's questions.
If there's one, there's another one.
That's
Do you
right.
really want to mess with a family member like that?
Right.
No.
No. If one gets in trouble, and he starts calling for his buddies, then you want to be out of there, because it's like you're not going to be hanging around, because these things they are powerful, and the amount of leverage that they have with their arms has got to be incredible. I mean, they're supposed to be able to hunt deer, and they just grab the deer and swing it up against a tree and break its neck, and there's been other reports where they killed elk, where they ran up by the elk and they punch them in the rib cage and just collapse their rib on their heart and everything and kill them instantly. I mean,
I've heard a couple different stories on that. Yeah, and that's what kind of freaked me out with my sighting, knowing how, seeing the muscle tones and how big it was and what it could do to me.
Yes. Yeah, and Ernie was thinking the same thing during his sighting. He was thinking it's like, I'm not going to run. If this thing wants to grab me, it's going to get me. And he's got his shotgun, but he's got number 4 shot in his shotgun. So he wasn't thinking that was going to do much good if this thing charged him. He had his hand close to his sidearm, which I believe was a 9mm, which would have been a little bit more appropriate. But still, I mean, you don't at that close range, it's like you could fire your handgun 3 or 4 times and hit it, and it would still have you by the throat, and you'd be in trouble.
Dead. He'd crush your throat. And Gary Gerhardt says, so 70 miles is a large range. Imagine the size of this thing.
Absolutely. And the amount of calories something like this needs. I mean, you look at the black bear when they're going into hibernation, the amount of calories they take in. There again, we've got some good information on that from what they do in zoos and stuff like that. They were able to kind of monitor their calorie intake, and so we can make some estimates about that too. And so when you look at the food supply that's necessary for the caloric intake for the Sasquatch, it's going to be pretty hefty. We're talking about a lot. If you're just eating berries and nuts, it's like you've got to be eating a lot of stuff.
So much stuff.
And they of course eat a lot of tubers. They eat the Jerusalem artichokes. They eat the cat nine tails. They eat the whole plant on a cat nine tails. I've got a person that has seen them actually doing it. They eat the whole plant. They pull it right up by the roots. They eat the tubers off, and then they eat the stalk. Indian potato is another one that's in the Cherokee National Forest. I've seen it over there, so I know that they eat that. Osterman spoke about that in his encounter too. So it's like, they have a wide variety of diet, along with leaves and certain things that they probably do eat as well. But they have to have a lot of deer meat as well to make the calories they need to be able to support their muscle tone, their size, their weight, everything.
Yeah, it's unreal. You think about what all they got to take in to support themselves.
That's right.
Then you wonder, all right, how can a bunch of them survive in one certain area?
Yeah,
they can.
And then there again, if they're in 100 square miles, they can be in one corner of that area for maybe a couple of months, getting food there, and then maybe they move into the other corner of that range, and they got 4 corners. They work around that, and there again, if the ranges of the Sasquatch don't overlap and there's gaps between the ranges, then that would allow them to actually to leave their range and go, like if you're in Maine, They would certainly go into Canada when the blueberries and the other berries become available, because the tremendous blueberry patches they have up there is a tremendous amount of food. And that's what they were doing when Meldrum was up at Snellgrove Lake. They were targeting that area because of the big the blueberry population up there. And it's like, so it's possible that they can migrate a short distance. It's not really migrate, it's just following the food, but they might go outside of their range. But on the other hand, there may be enough, depending on their range, there may be enough within 75 square miles, so they don't have to use their whole range.
Right. And that's like the ones up here in the Alleghenies.
Yeah.
Yeah. They got so much food source.
If you have black bear population that also is eating some of the same food, then that cuts into the the food for the Sasquatch too. So there's a lot to take into account when you start thinking about it and breaking it down.
And who's going to win the battle of the food?
Yeah,
it comes down to who's going to win that battle.
If it
the
comes
black
to
bear or the Sasquatch?
Battle, it's like the Sasquatch is going to win. Believe me. It's like,
yeah, but the black bear is going to get a couple swipes in.
Oh yeah, but the black bear is 200 or 300 pounds, and the Sasquatch is 500 to 900 pounds. And has the leverage in such a long, muscular arm that he can break the back of a deer or break the neck. So, all he has to do is get a hold of a bear, and the bear's in trouble. Yes,
but still, it makes you wonder. All right. The bear, it's not the black bear per se, is not aggressive. They're really not.
Right.
Yeah.
So they would tend to, back down anyway. They're going
to. So
it's like they'll get some food somewhere else, and
then
if they're working on a roadkill, they're eating a deer on a roadkill, and the Sasquatch comes along, I think they just pass it off and give it up to him. You don't think they're not stupid. It's like, animals know when they go up against another animal if this is something that they can win, or they're going to lose or maybe get injured, which certainly could be a death sentence to them if their leg gets broken or something, fighting with another mountain lion, 2 mountain lions fighting over one meal or whatever. That can be a killer for you if you get damaged. So you gotta be careful when you pick your fight if you're an animal in the wilderness, for sure.
But like you said, it all depends on the food source and how hungry they are.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And the bears are trying to put on a lot of calories for the winter, because they need that to survive their hibernation. So apples and all that stuff is huge for them. When I lived in Vermont, I worked for the Park Service, and it's like, they were into the apples really heavy in the fall. They in fact, they eat the apples so much that they eat them, and then they cough them up and then go and eat some more. It's like they just keep their constant eating machine during the fall.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because they know the winter's coming,
right?
And they got to build up the fat, whatever.
And it doesn't appear that the Sasquatch has a lot of fat on him. He's pretty muscular, so for those muscles to show through like a bodybuilder, they got to be pretty lean. So chances are of them having, a large fat store is not very good, in my opinion. So that would kind of rule out any kind of hibernation for the Sasquatch, because without the fat, that hibernation, maybe they could do something for a couple of weeks and be okay, but they not like a bear, which might be laid up for 3 to 5 months if you're in Maine or Canada. So that's too long.
When you're saying when they're in hibernation, they're not totally in hibernation for that 3 to 5 months. They're not sleeping the whole time. They do get up and try to forage a little bit, but
right. And they'll come
like
out.
You're saying,
if the temperature warms up, right, they will come out. Yep.
And the thing is that, like you said, the fat content on a Sasquatch is minimal.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And
Everything that we're seeing that people are describing, it's got to be minimal to have that kind of muscle tone showing through. You got to be like a bodybuilder, and a bodybuilder has a body fat rate of probably 15%, maybe 12%. I mean, it's pretty low.
I never thought of it that way till you just brought it up, and that makes a lot of sense because people ask, "Do you think they hibernate?" And I honestly said, I don't think, but I didn't think of because of the fat content on the body either to help insulate them.
It would make more sense that they might migrate out of an area from one area to another. If you're in Canada, maybe you migrate into Pennsylvania for the winter. Maybe you go back to Canada in the spring. I could see that. But I also believe if you're in North Carolina or Virginia or, parts of California, they probably don't migrate out of those areas. The winter isn't so bad that they can get a lot of food all winter long. But with heavy snows and cold weather, the food supply that's available in those northern, that's a different story there. So migrating makes more sense to me than hibernation.
The other thing too is I don't see them actually migrating. I do see them getting out there and hunting a little bit for their food, foraging, whatever. But the hibernate, I could never see that because we find footprints in the snow.
Yep.
You find,
and if it gets warm, the bear comes out of hibernation too, and he can leave footprints in the snow. But it's not quite the same. It's apples and oranges, certainly.
Yes, and I never really bought into the hibernation. And I have people ask me, "Do you think they migrate down the Allegheny Mountains, down the Appalachian Trail?"
Yeah.
They might.
Yeah, it's possible.
They might.
I think it depends on where they are. If they're in upper New York State and the winter isn't so bad and food's, they can find stuff to eat and things are going well, they probably don't move too much. But if the winter is hard, there's a lot of deep snow, and there's no deer or anything to speak of in the area, it's like, I think that they would move certainly into another area. It may not be what I would call migration when you think about it, not like a bird, which migrates from Vermont and goes to South America. We're not talking that kind of a migration at all. It's just a matter of following some food sources. So
exactly.
It may not be very far at all. So
yeah, it could be 100 miles, but still, that's not really migrating to me.
Right. Yeah.
But
when Dr. Meldrum went to Snell Grove Lake the second time, they were up there too early, and the blueberries weren't ripe in their area, so they had absolutely no Sasquatch. There was nothing. They didn't get any.
Yeah, no activity.
They didn't get anything. But they found out afterwards, or as they were there, I guess they found out that there was a number of sightings in the blueberry patches south of them. It was a number of miles. I think it was about 100 miles south of them, where people were picking the ripe berries, and there were several sightings. So, so they certainly were in a different place when these other berries at Snell Grove Lake became ripe. I'm sure they moved back into that area again, and they might have had some luck seeing them.
Exactly. You got to have the right timing. Like Mary Fabian and I went up to New York. It's New York PA borderline. And this researcher had a sighting up there. There's all kind of evidence, the whole 9 yards. He tried to get us up there for almost a year. And we went up here last month and did the little bit of the investigation for 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
But the weather was 19 degrees, and the wind chill had to be down around 0.
Yeah.
So it was kind of hard getting out there and doing the investigation and that. I really did not want to get out of the truck the few times we got out. But there's evidence there. We couldn't actually get to where we wanted to go a couple places there. But we're going to go back in May.
Okay. Was there a lot of snow? Was there a lot of snow when you were there?
No.
No. Okay.
No,
that
not
helps.
a lot.
It makes
That
it a little
does
easier
help.
to get around. If you have to go out on snowshoes or something, that's a little bit more difficult to get around.
But it was just deep cold, very cold.
Yeah.
It was very interesting because there's signs there, definitely signs there. No, Val, that wasn't the Pocono area. The Western New York, Western Pennsylvania, or about Central PA, almost Central PA area, right on because Val, Southwest PAS. But it was very interesting up there.
Some of those areas in upstate New York too. There's a couple of spots up there that sighting reports are very high during certain times of the year, and then other times of the year there's nothing. So that would tend to indicate that there might be some movement at certain times of the year, and then other times of the year there isn't. So that would certainly kind of imply that because of the number of sightings. So that would certainly show you that there's some kind of movement, and the area between the mountains, Mount Marcy on one side is really high, and then you got Lake Champlain on the other side. It creates a funnel down through there out of Canada. And some of these numbers we're seeing in these towns in those areas, that's what they seem to indicate. There are certain times there's a lot more movement than others.
Yeah, but like where we were seeing that the evidence up there, I come back down here to my research area. Not so much activities right now. Come springtime, we got a lot more activity. Summertime, you still got some, but not as high as it is in spring. Springtime, it just seems crazy here with activity.
Yeah, and maybe you've got a lot of food available in the spring. It might be a specific type of food or something that they'll eat. Redbud. The redbuds in the spring have a seed pod that looks like a green bean. It's actually part of the green bean family. And these were eaten pretty heavily by the Native Americans. So if those are available, then that's a springtime food. It's very early that those are right on the tree and available for them. So it could be something like that. If that's in your area in the spring, then obviously they're going to be there.
I'm not sure. I'm going to have to ask Jamie King. Because Jamie, he micro studies the area. And he micro studies a whole big area. Right. I micro study a smaller section of it. Well,
down where I am in Western Virginia, we have quite a lot of those red buds. So it's and the seed pod is, like I said, it's just like a green bean. Basically, the Native Americans would eat it in the spring, and then it kind of turns brown and dries up during the summer, and then falls off the tree in the fall. And then, of course, your turkeys and everybody eats those things once they're on the ground.
Right.
But that's a really early food source. That there's a few other things that would be available pretty early too. Your cat nine tails would start sprouting out. They start coming up. That's a favorite food. Mushrooms are favorite food too, and those are usually available.
I know. Definitely mushrooms. The morels. Oh my God, that's some more. Yeah, but exactly. And that's something I've been learning more and more every time I go out, is to study the vegetation and all that.
Right. And what's available in your target area?
Yeah.
Which may not be available 1 or 200 miles south or north from where you are,
Right.
that particular food type might not be available there. So that
Right.
means that your area would be a target area to get that food, where it wouldn't be during the summer or something. They would be back in some other area, so eating
Right.
some other food.
I ain't saying they're not in that area, but they're not as active.
Right,
And
right.
and actually, the area that my micro study is on both sides of this road. They're at the lake, but the one area, Brenda Sproul and I went walking in, and we walked up along the tree line on the bank, and then going up into the woods and checking things out up in there. And then when we come back out, we start walking down closer to the water. Damn if we didn't find a trackway down near the water that went for over 100 yards.
Nice.
And
wow.
you could see the toe prints and everything. Now, this is the beginning of March.
Yep. Yep.
So there ain't nobody walking around out at the damn beginning of March with no shoes on. I don't care.
Right, right.
Yeah. And it went for over 100 yards at that. And
their foot isn't 14 or 15 inches long either. So I mean,
it was 14 inches, 5 inches wide. There ain't no damn human. I don't care. And of course,
you can see the impression of the weight in the track too. That's the other thing to look at. It's like that tells you,
I'm 175 pounds, and I barely put a dent into it.
Yeah.
Where that impression was deep enough that we went ahead and went to cast it. Of course, I screwed it. My very first casting, Russell. Oh, man, I'm so excited. I'm getting a casting. No, I didn't. I screwed it up.
Well,
I screwed it up.
You had a bunch of tracks to work with. If you have several, that's pretty good. You get better the more you do it.
Yeah. Well, Brenda, she went ahead and she got some casting material. So we made it up. We let it sit till the next day. We come back. We get it up out of there, turned it over, a big size rock in the middle of it.
Oh,
it's like, oh, man. I said, still clean it up. Clean it up. It's still a good cast.
Still a good one. Save it.
Yep. But, so that was kind of upset us that I screwed up.
If you're going to cast things, it's a good idea to go out and practice. You can cast some bear tracks or something down by a stream where you get a good track and practice doing it a little bit, because it's not.
That's what I should have.
That plaster, when you add the water to it, it starts the process of drying immediately. So if you don't get everything, the timing isn't right, getting it in your track, you end up with a lot of crumbly.
The other thing we didn't take in consideration is the dampness of the ground being that close to the lake.
Right. That's the other thing, because the plaster will wick the moisture out of the ground. So it makes it slow drying, so and that's why cover it. If you're going to leave it overnight, you got to cover it with something.
And that's what we did too. I put up 4 sticks into the ground around it and put a plastic bag on top of it.
There you go. Yep.
And I'm praying to God no one would mess with it if they come down to walk along there, or a deer or something step on it. And
stuff can happen, but
but I told Brenda, we're letting it sit for 24 hours. I'll meet you back here at 3:00 tomorrow.
And we'll pull it up, and it'll be a nice track, and we'll take it back to the house.
And met her back there at 3, and we took our time getting it out, and I'm scraping dirt and stones away from around the outside edge, get it out, flip it over. It's like, a
rock.
But that's how it goes.
I talked to Dr. Meldrum about that when he was talking about casting tracks, and he does something like what I do is I take a piece of metal flashing, and I have it cut, and it's about 2 feet long, and it's about 2 inches tall. And when you get a track, you're able to take that aluminum flashing, that tin, and just bend it around the track and then push it into the soil, because of the metal is kind of like a knife edge. So it kind of cuts in through sod and light debris and stuff. And then use a paper clip where they overlap to hold it together. And what that does is it creates a space above the track. So it allows for the plaster to be actually outside of the track and above it, which will pick up any stress fractures that the track, that the impression made when it was put in the ground. Sometimes you get cracks in the soil leading away from the track. And that's pretty valuable information. So by having this be above the track, it allows you to pick that up. So that which is very helpful. So Dr.
That's
Melvin
interesting
about that too.
That's interesting. I'm going to have to.
Yeah, it works really good. Works really good. The aluminum, that aluminum flashing bends very nicely, and you can just push it in the ground. And then where the two overlap, you just fold it over and put a paper clip on it. That holds it. And then when you put the plaster in, it acts like a wall around the track. So it supports the plaster. So it works good.
I like that. I'm going to do that. I like that. That's cool.
You got something to practice.
Yeah. Thank you, Russell. I needed that one. Yeah. That's interesting. Now I got to get some flashing. And of course, I'm retired from construction. Now I got to go out and buy stuff.
Yeah, there you go. I was in construction too. When I worked for the North Carolina Forest Service, and I worked for Vermont State Parks, but I was an electrician too, working construction jobs for a number of years too. So, you have access to that kind of stuff in the junk pile. It's like you get to pick out whatever you can need to take home, extra piece of wood or whatever. So,
well, what's crazy is I put on almost 5,000 roofs in my lifetime. So,
oh boy.
I had a bunch of flashing at times. And now I'll have to go buy a roll.
Yeah. Well, the aluminum flashing works better than the copper. So that's a good thing. You don't have to spend that money for the copper.
That's true. Because there's no way.
Yeah.
My wife would shoot me. My wife would shoot me if I go, oh, I need copper flashing for casting. How much is it? Not much, babe. Not much. Yeah, right.
No,
I'll be shot.
Aluminum flashing's not too bad. You don't even need very much. You only need about 24 inches or so. And, and you could cut it in half or whatever, and you'd have two pieces to work with. And it rolls up pretty nicely too.
Yeah, it does.
Little where you can put it in I put it in a can. I have a can which I cut the top off, and it just rolls up into this nice little ball. It's only about 2 inches wide, and it fits into the can. So you can throw it in your pack with your water and your plaster, and it doesn't, cut everything in your pack to pieces because of the sharp edge on the tin. So
right. Val says she has to run. Very interesting and informative show. Thank you. Thank you for watching, Val. We appreciate it.
For sure.
And thank you for the questions. The thing is, all these little tips help.
Absolutely.
Not just me, other ones out there, and that's the main reason I do this show.
That's right. Yeah. And if information comes in that you didn't know, if you didn't know that, there was a paper done that said that this Bigfoot that they had a 70-mile range. That's a good piece of information you didn't have that you have to work with. So
yeah, and that's the thing, and that's why we do these shows, so I can learn more, other people can learn, and if I get some information, I'll share it too, and and I know you're a wealth of information anyhow, Russell.
And then discussing the research too is important. I mean, because we have different points of view that we look at things in a certain way. Each of us can be a little bit different. So, we can take all that information and put it together and get a pretty good piece of information to work from. So, but having a good discussion on whatever you're discussing, whether it's population or the
Right.
size of a footprint impression, and how much that size of the foot determines how deep the impression is based on whatever the weight may be. I mean, all there again, there's formulas for that kind of stuff that takes some doing to figure out when you're trying to, ascertain that what the weight was of that Sasquatch. So.
Yes. The other thing too, I have, like you're saying, the weight wise and that, the depth of that footprint that we came on,
Right.
compared to my 175 pounds, I went an eighth of an inch, if that, into
Right.
impression that I left.
Yep.
This thing left at least a half inch, maybe a little deeper of an
Okay.
impression.
Right.
So that thing had to go 600 pounds.
Yeah, and the other thing to remember is that track is a lot wider than your foot was. So being wider, it should mean it shouldn't be as deep a track. But because it is so deep, that probably amplifies the weight figure based on the narrowness of your foot and how much yours went into the ground. So there again, you got
You're right.
to figure that out to you get a good number.
I never thought of that part of it.
Yep.
Yeah, because the wider the foot, the more weight distribution.
Right. It should make the track go into the ground less because the foot is wider, but that's not the case. So that means that the actual weight is considerably more than what you might think.
Yeah.
So if your 170 pounds only goes in half as much, but the track is twice as wide or three times as wide or whatever, then that tells you that number is pretty high. You're looking up around 700-800 pounds, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Wow.
Yeah, all these things you have to consider, and then you want to consider the material that the track is in. You're talking a kind of a sandy gravel, or is it kind of a silty mud, or is it on more dry ground so that you don't have the kind of depth possible because the ground is so dry, but you can still see the outline of a track. But all
like
that,
the investigation I went on here a week after my birthday, or the Sunday after. It was almost a week. It was like around actually my birthday was on it was like the 30th or 31st. We went on of January on an investigation near here where a Class A sighting was.
Mhm.
And when she had that sighting on Monday, there was snow over everything.
Oh,
Come that Sunday, the snow was pretty much melted off, but it was still cold. But there's a lot of moisture in that on the ground, on top of the ground, on top of the leaves and all that. And it was private property. It was all posted. So I couldn't go too far into that area without permission. But I walked in a little bit, and I did see, it looked like impressions of a large foot, but you couldn't tell because the leaves and the water and all that was laying on top of the leaves. It's supposed to be hopefully getting permission to go back in there again here soon, so we can, travel in there, see if we can find out any other evidence.
Right. Well, that would be good.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I can't get out so much anymore, so my field work is kind of limited because of my Parkinson's disease.
Right.
But so that just means I sit in front of the computer a lot more, doing a lot more research and coming up with all this stuff that I try to express to people, because I think it's important to, even for the people who are non-believers, to sit and listen a little bit to what I have to say. And then if you are someday surprised and something goes across in front of your car on the road, you're knowledgeable enough to know what it is you just saw, because you listened to a talk that somebody gave, even though you don't believe in them. But you do now because you've seen one. But that there again, I think it's important. So, Yeah.
Yes, it is. And like the NBC used to do, the more you know,
That's
those little
right.
tidbits. And I believe in that part,
Yep.
110%. The more you
Yep.
know about
Sure.
it. And, I've had some interesting people on my show here that very knowledgeable. And you're up in there with them too, by the
Oh.
way. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you. It's like
Yeah.
I try to. I'm learning stuff all the time too. So
Yeah.
I'm just happy when I can find some information. And I was telling Michael on his show about a newspaper clipping that I found that goes back. I've been able to figure out that it goes back to about the 1750s. And it talks about a wild man about 7 foot tall that they had on board a ship that they were taking to England to give as a gift to a gentleman. His name was Buffon, and he had written a number of books about wildlife and their anatomy and stuff. And actually, he'd written letters to Thomas Jefferson, and Thomas Jefferson sent him a moose. A whole body moose with antlers, everything, the whole thing, put it on board a ship and sent it to Buffon. So,
Wow.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
But this newspaper clipping describes it 7 foot tall, big. It talks about the really large feet, the muscular tone. It said it was as strong as 12 men. I don't know how they came up with that, but that's what they said in the clipping. So and to be in the 1750s, that's pretty old. So,
Wow. That's interesting.
yeah.
That's interesting. And sending a wild. So that's how they got him over there.
Yeah.
Oh shoot.
Yeah.
But anyhow, it's 22 after 8, Russell.
Okay.
You want to go a little bit longer, or?
It's up to you. If we got more questions, that's good. I'll answer questions.
I ain't seeing no other questions coming in. But
okay. Have you got any questions?
Yes, when your TV series starting?
I don't know that people would want to tune in to listen to what I have to say. So,
no, I think they would. I enjoy watching you on with Larry and a few other podcasts and that. I do appreciate you jumping in on short notice for me. I really do, Russell.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. It was fun. And, if you need somebody some other time, it's like, don't be afraid to holler at me, because I'd be willing to jump in with you anytime. So
I appreciate 110%. And it's been an honor to have you on here. Seriously.
Well, thank you.
And so I don't see any other questions coming out. I appreciate it, everyone's participation, and thank you again, Russell.
Okay.
Stick around for a few minutes afterwards.
Okay.
I'm going to put my outro on, and I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes after.
Okay, sure.
This has been an Agents of the Unexplained original podcast. Like us on Facebook, subscribe and view on YouTube, and please visit our store link in the bio. Thank you for listening, and remember that paranormal is the new normal.